Now let's talk about variables and understand what it does and what it is for. In PHP, variables is quite different compared to other programming languages like C++ or JavaScript. In C++, you always need to describe your variables with types like integer, float, string, and so on. But with PHP, you don't really need to describe it with types. Just like in other programming languages, variables are used for storing values. Think of it like a box where you store your belongings or items. Now, to create a variable in PHP, it always starts with $sign followed by the name of the variable. Let's open our index.php and I'll give you an example. Like I said earlier, to create the variable, we need to start it with a $sign followed by the name of the variable. Let's name our variable hello and let's just close that with semicolon. Now, this makes the variable empty and we don't know what type of variable this is. We don't know if it's an integer, string, or float. It's nothing. It's just an empty variable. But what if we give it a value, let's say by adding an equal sign over here and by giving it a value, let's say 10. Now this variable is now an integer, but it doesn't mean that it's always going to be an integer. It can be changed into a string. Like for example, we want to change the value to a string like world. Now this is a string variable now. Now, what if we want to add a number to a string? Let's say world and then there's like a 10 over here. Like let's say let's add a 10 over here. Now, what if we do it like that? Well, it's not going to work because in the first place, this is a string and this is an integer. It's not going to work. Actually, if we save this and open our front end, we should have the following error. A non-numeric value encountered in our file on line 10. So that means this line is not working because you can't combine a string with an integer. So we need to remove this. Now let's say we want to create another variable and I'll call this, let's say int. And then I'll give it a value of 10. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'll use plus sign and I'll just use the variable int. Now if I save this once again, it should do the same thing. Now we still have the same error because this variable is an int and this variable is string. So you can't combine int with a string variable. Now for us to be able to combine a string with an integer, we have to do what is called concatenation. In programming, concatenation is the operation of combining or joining strings end to end. If we do that to our variable, everything will return as a string. So let's actually create another empty variable over here. So I'll just call this concat. And then to concatenate these two variables, we need to use the dot symbol or period symbol. So let's add an equal sign over here and then we'll just use the variable hello and then the dot symbol for concatenating strings. And then we need to use another variable, which is the int variable. Now, let me ask you, what type of variable is this now? Is it an int? Nope. Is it a float? Nope. That's correct. It is a string variable now. If we actually echo this out, actually let me just remove the hello world and then I'll just add the concat variable here. And if we open our front end, we should have the following output. Oh no, actually we need to remove the variable int here. So actually it's not going to work because like I said, yeah, this is an int, this is a string, it's not going to work. Let's remove this and concatenate these two variables. And if we save that, go back to front end, as you can see, the world and 10 is now combined or joined. It's important to remember that variables in PHP is actually case sensitive. That means if we create another variable with an uppercase, let's say for example, let's create another variable and we'll call this hello with an uppercase H and I'll give this a value of worldwide, for example. And then what I'm going to do is concatenate. Let's actually another thing that you need to keep in mind is you can't call this variable if it's above. Let's say, for example, let's call this over here and then the hello variable over here. You can't use the variable if you declare it below where you used it. If we save this and open our front end, as you can see, the variable is undefined because you used the variable above the declaration. So for it to work, you need to declare it above first, then use it below like so. So if we save that and open our front end, as you can see, now it worked. Again, declare it above, then you can use it below. Now, what if my variables are actually an integer? So let's say we have the int variable over here, and I'll change the value of hello to something like 12. What if I actually concatenate these two variables? Let's actually try that. So I'll change the hello variable to int. And if I save this and open the front end, as you can see, it concatenated into a string. That means this two is actually, or this variable is still a string. But instead of summing these two, it concatenated, it just combined the string. Now, what if I want these two variables to be summed? Then I'll just change the dot symbol with plus sign. And if I save this, the sum would be 22. Now, it's important to remember that dot sign or period sign is for concatenation and plus sign is for addition. In the next video, we'll take a look at if statements.